Anime. 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 Spooky season is finally here, and just in time for the debut of what I think is the scariest, most horrifying anime ever made. Hello everyone, I'm Finn. Welcome back to Finn Films. Join me today as we are once again talking about what I think might be easily my favorite anime that is coming out this year. An anime that was given a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes after just one episode. Yes, that's right. Today we're talking about the anime adaptation of the Japanese manga horror icon Junji Ito's Uzumaki. In today's video, we're going to be discussing and breaking down all of the insane spooks and pieces of body horror that took place in episode 2 of Junji Ito's Uzumaki. An episode where these two girls have a hair fight, this young couple spirals out of control, and these boys turn into snails? So if you didn't know, Junji Ito is regarded by many, held by many, to be the GOAT of Japanese horror, specifically manga. Ito's works largely focus around like two kind of major themes, body horror and cosmic horror. Many people comparing his works to that of H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu universe, specifically in these aspects of kind of cosmic horror, as well as in the dark, cruel aspects of the worlds that Junji Ito creates. In Ito's own words, he says, "I draw that manifestation of the mind becoming reality represented in body horror." And goddamn, is that metal as shit when you realize that these are the types of manifestations that are coming out of the mind of Junji Ito. Now, there have been several attempts to adapt Ito's like iconic horror manga into other mediums, whether it be an anime or live action movies, and most of them have, well, they've not been able to live up to what I think is the true horror that comes from Ito's drawn work, the drawn work in his manga and graphic novels, that is, until now. Junji Ito's Uzumaki tells the story of a small coastal Japanese town that has been cursed with these strange spiral-like patterns. Their town has become haunted by these spirals, these secret hypnotic shapes of the worlds that are slowly driving the town mad, manifesting themselves over time in larger and more horrifying ways. I did a whole video covering episode 1 of the Uzumaki anime, so I do highly recommend you checking that video out probably before you watch this video. However, here's a quick summary. Our story primarily follows a young high school couple, Shuichi and his girlfriend Kiri, as they watch their town begin to be consumed by these strange spirals. Shuichi's own father being consumed by these maddening spirals, so much so that it led to his own death, while his mother has now gone mad from the thoughts of what happened to her husband and what her husband has done to himself. Specifically, well, this. Episode 2 begins with Kiri in class at school, when a strange, slow-moving and talking boy that we saw from episode 1 enters the classroom. This boy's name is Katayama, the entire classroom gasping in shock when they see a strange spiral-like growth emerging from his back. Katayama is kind of better known in the Junji Ito fanbase as the Snail Boy, and I'm sure you can already imagine why he's called that. But we're getting just a little bit ahead of ourselves. We flash over to another young couple who we see hiding out together when suddenly they see something strange. Two snakes coiled around one another. This is Yoriko and Kazunori, a young couple who want nothing more but to be together. But they are stopped by the hatred of both of their parents, of their families, a hatred that is shared for each other. We then flash back over to Kiri and one of her friends who are walking home from school through a graveyard. We learn that the town has now shifted to burying their dead over the traditional cremation rites after the strange spiral-like event that took place at the funeral of Shuichi's father, which we saw in episode 1. As the two girls talk with one another, they are suddenly both jump scared by a young man named Yamaguchi, who then declares his love for Kiri. He says even though Kiri has a boyfriend, he wants to score a pretty lady like you and shock the hell out of everyone. Yeah, that's not a weird thing to say at all. We learn that the kids in the school refer to this young man as Jack in the Box because of his love of scaring people and the fact that he's, well, a bit freaking weird. Kiri continues walking home where she comes upon Yoriko and Kazunori being separated by Yoriko's father and her elder brother, who then punches Kazunori in the face as they drag Yoriko off. Kazunori then tells Kiri about their relationship, the relationship between these two families, and that even though they are neighbors, the families hate one another. In Kazunori's words, the families are twisted. This is something that we see a lot through Uzumaki, Ito playing with this kind of vocabulary usage and the many similes of spirals. In this case, the fact that the family is twisted. Again, twisted, kind of playing upon this spiral imagery, the spiral imagery that plagues the town and is driving people mad. Kazunori believes that the twisted nature of the two family comes from not being able to deal with the poverty that they have suddenly found themselves in. So they use this anger and this twisted hatred, this nature, for one another as a shield from their reality. In Kazunori's words, when two groups of twisted people lock horns, they entangle and things spiral out of control, being completely impossible for anyone to break free. Again, the words that Kazunori uses brings back the imagery that we saw at the beginning of the episode in the opening scene. This imagery of two snakes coiled, tangled, twisted with one another. And oh yeah, let me tell you, that imagery is going to be really important later on in the episode. Kazunori believes that he and Yoriko have not become like their families because of the love that they have for one another, and they want to save themselves from this fate. So they plan to run away together and flee the town the next day on a train. Kiri's boyfriend Shuichi believes that it is the town's curse, this curse of the spirals, that has caused these two families to be forever locked into this twisted behavior warping their souls along with the rest of the town. These many spirals forever drawing people into its center in an almost hypnotic-like gaze, hypnotic-like pattern. When suddenly though, Shuichi makes a random observation that Kiri's hair has seemingly grown longer at a very abnormal rate. The next day, Kiri is at school, and many of the other kids are staring at her when it is revealed that Kiri's hair that has grown longer has randomly begun to curl into small spiral-like patterns. Another girl, Kyoko, tries to help Kiri by putting her hair into braids, but the hair seemingly has a mind of its own as it slowly unravels and begins curling even more, curling into these strange spirals. Out of nowhere though, a large, strange, disgusting snail-like creature begins sliding upside the classroom window. This is Katayama, the snail boy who has now completely completed his transformation into a snail. His eyes popping out of his face into horrifying eye stalks. This is really a classic Junji Ito horror scene, a classic work of Junji Ito body horror, a scene that really makes your skin crawl, but at the same time, you are like unable to pull yourself away of what you're seeing on screen. And I'm not gonna lie, I was really impressed with how they animated this scene. In this chaos in the classroom, Kiri slips out, heading to a nearby salon in an attempt to cut off these strange spirals, these strange curls growing on her hair. But to our shock and horror, her hair seemingly has a mind of its own. It's almost become sentient as it attacks the salon shop owner. Kiri then rushes home to her family where we see her hair has begun strangling her. Her little brother points out that the hair is angry at Kiri specifically for trying to cut it, as suddenly though it stops. It stopped strangling Kiri as we see it lift up into these ever-growing larger, stranger, spiral-like patterns, seemingly entrancing her family into a kind of almost like hypnotic state. Again, I talked about this in episode 1 a little bit, but there is a reason why this kind of hypnotic spiral-like pattern is used by hypnotists in hypnosis, and there is a reason that, Ito is invoking this kind of imagery here. The next day, Kiri heads to school, her hair even larger as it stands high in the air, displaying its mini spiral-like entrancing patterns to all of those around it. Remember back to what her boyfriend Shuichi said, that these spirals spread to all of those who see it and interact with it, forever kind of drawing them deeper within it. The spirals holds over these people, drawing larger, drawing more all-encompassing as it craves to be the center of the attention. We see the girl Kyoko, the girl who helped Kiri put her hair into braids, seemingly has grown jealous of all the attention that Kiri is receiving, as she vows to attract even more attention to herself. Kiri, wanting to get away from everyone in this madness, heads outside to a pen behind the school where we see that they are keeping this snail boy Katayama. She hears people coming though, so she hides behind the pin as we see their teacher bringing Katayama's parents to see what has happened to their son. The parents gasp in shock, in horror, and anger as they refuse to believe that this creature, this strange snail-like creature, is their son as they storm off away. After school, Kiri heads to the station like she does most days to meet with her boyfriend Shuichi. We see that Kiri is being followed by a number of kids from their school, these kids all being entranced by Kiri's spiral-like hair. Shuichi, though, unlike everyone else, when he sees her, runs away from her, as so far in our story, Shuichi really seems to be the only character that really seems to have a greater understanding of like what is going on with the spirals in this town and this strange kind of curse that this town has. Kiri is once again stopped by the weird boy, the Jack-in-the-Box boy, who once again declares his love for her, presenting her with a small box, a present. Kiri, though, again denies him, the boy asking what he could possibly do to prove his love to her. He suddenly, though, has an idea, the boy running into the street, declaring that he will prove his love to her by showing her that his love has the power to stop a moving car. And to, no one's surprise, we all know what happens next. The boy is run over by the car, the boy being wrapped around the car's front wheel. With his dying breath, the boy once again declares his love for Kiri, the small box opening, a Jack-in-the-Box coming springing out. Back at school, the kids are horrified to see that the strange snail boy once again has been freed and is climbing on the outside of the school, but they realize that this is not Katayama, the first snail boy, but the school bully, Sumura, who we saw in episode 1 berating and embarrassing Katayama. He too has been transformed into this strange snail-like creature, the two boys being placed into the pen together. When suddenly, though, we hear a voice coming from behind Kiri, a voice calling her out. In a kind of dramatic standoff that felt like it was straight out of a shonen anime, we see Kyoko, the jealous girl, whose hair now has dramatically curled into spirals similar to Kiri's. Kyoko declaring that she is better than Kiri and will not be second, she will be the center of attention. The two girls face off against one another, their strange spiral-like hair lashing out, doing its best Super Saiyan 3 Goku impression in a scene that felt like it was straight out of an anime like Parasite or Tokyo Ghoul. We see that Kyoko has gone mad from the spirals, wanting to be the center of attention as her hair begins strangling Kiri until suddenly Shuichi appears with a pair of scissors cutting Kyoko's hair. He attempts to cut off Kiri's hair, but the hair has a mind of its own, wrapping Shuichi up in this almost cocoon-like thing. Kyoko lets out a maddening laugh, her face beginning to contort, her eyes wide with this insane look, as she declares victory. She declares that she is now the center of attention, as she struts away laughing maniacally. Shuichi, though, is okay, and he manages to cut his way out of this hair-like cocoon with the scissors, cutting away Kiri's hair until it is completely short. Kyoko, though, has gone completely insane, strutting through the streets of this town, laughing insanely, her hair continuing to spiral out of control. She begins gasping for air, declaring that she needs even more attention, as she collapses against a light pole, her hair slowly beginning to coil up the pole's length. Shuichi helps Kiri to her feet when we hear voices of panic begin ringing out throughout the schoolyard, declaring that the two snail boys have gotten loose and they must be stopped, they must be gotten rid of before they cause a panic in the city. Our young couple then follow the slime trail into the forest where they see their teacher huddled over a pile of eggs. We learn that these eggs were made by the two snail boys as we get a quick little biology lesson on the reproduction of snails. The teacher then, to Kiri's horror, stomps on the eggs, destroying them as Kiri yells out in protest, begging him to stop. In the chaos, Kiri remembers that Yoruko and Kazunori were planning to run away on a train that day, as she rushes with Shuichi to the train station to try to help them. We see the young couple arrive, but they are being pursued by their parents who are trying to stop them. Kiri and Shuichi try to help them escape, taking them through a back way that leads out onto the beach, trying to make their way to the station. However, the young couple falls onto the sandy beach, exhausted and out of breath as their parents descend upon them. It seems like this young couple is again going to be pulled apart when Kazunori declares that they will never be separated. They will twist together for all eternity. As both of them, in a horrific, grotesque scene, begin twisting their bodies together, twisting their bodies becoming intertwined with one another, very much like the snakes we saw in the opening shot of the episode. They tell their parents to leave them alone, as it is impossible now to break their love. They will be together forever in their joined, twisted bodies, as their twisted bodies slither off into the ocean, the screen fading to white. A white which transitions to the white light of the lighthouse. A lighthouse that has been broken for many years but has suddenly become unlit. The next day, Carrie is walking in the town heading to school when she comes upon a number of people who are aimlessly walking around in circles. We learn that the lighthouse that was lit up last night, again, has been broken for several years, where out of nowhere it has become a light. Many people believing that it is this light that is making people go insane. Suddenly, though, to the shock and horror of the classroom, the door opens as their teacher comes slithering inside, he too being turned into a snail person. Kiri heads home where she comes across her younger brother, who in a panic takes her to the beach by the lighthouse. Here we see beneath the lighthouse a ship that has run aground. The story goes that the ship had run aground because the sailors that had manned the ship were walking in circles, several of them falling into the water below, only one of them surviving. Kiri's younger brother Mitsuo, though, out of nowhere runs off to the lighthouse with a group of other boys, Kiri following him, running after him to try to stop him. She makes her way up the winding, never-ending stairs of the lighthouse, the walls of the lighthouse being covered in these strange spiral-like patterns and drawings, as Kiri picks up a strange smell of burning that we see comes from the bodies of a bunch of burned men. She rushes to the top of the lighthouse to find a strange spiral-like growth that has taken over the lighthouse lens, her younger brother unable to move. She looks out the lighthouse window when her face changes to one of horror and panic, as we see that the sun has almost completely set. Kiri realizes that these people were burned from the light of the lighthouse, as this light must be so hot it was able to melt glass and even melt people. Kiri and her brother frantically try to rush down the stairs, frantically trying to flee from this oncoming light, this oncoming heat. But it's too late. We watch the light and the heat go rushing down the stairs, catching both the young boy and his elder sister, as both of them scream out in horror as the episode ends in a blinding flash of white light. Now, I said this before in my video covering the first episode of Uzumaki, and I'll say it again, this honestly might be the best horror anime that's ever been made, and it's certainly the best on-screen adaptation of any of Junji Ito's work. A few years back, Netflix did an adaptation of the Japanese Tales of the Macabre, a collection of Junji Ito's short stories, many of which, in my opinion, are some of my favorite of his works, some of his most notable works, but man, did this adaptation have some real problems, the chief of which being the problem of the animation style of this adaptation, specifically a kind of classic animation art style, which I don't know why they decided to go with, but many people felt like it didn't accurately translate the horror of Junji Ito's drawn work into an animated on-screen adaptation. This adaptation of Uzumaki, though, well, they absolutely nailed the body horror and themes of Ito's work, and a large part of this is due to how they actually animated this show. Specifically in the use of an animation technique known as rotoscoping, which is where an animator transfers frame-by-frame images of live action, allowing the movement of the animated characters to feel much more fluid and lifelike. And yes, they actually did shoot live action footage of Uzumaki in order to turn it into an animated series. This technique of rotoscoping, along with the choice to stay in black and white to not use color in this animation, as well as the choice to kind of slow the movements of the characters, all of the characters down, I think all combine together to really capture the horror of Ito's artwork into an animated format. I mean, this anime took 5 years to make, and I really feel like you can see why it took so long when you look at the painstaking detail that the animators used to try and capture the look and feel of Junji Ito's graphic novel. As well, I'm really enjoying the pacing of this adaptation. I mean, they took a graphic novel, which is somewhere around 650 pages long, and have transformed it into a 4-part animated series series, with each episode ranging somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes. In doing so, they had to kind of move and change a lot of the kind of like certain parts of the story from the actual like graphic novel, the book Uzumaki, in order to allow the kind of animated miniseries to flow better in this animated format. I mean, this episode specifically was packed full of plot and like all these horrific moments, especially when you compare it to the first episode. It felt like every single scene was just like beat after beat, something more and more terrifying and horrific. And I really felt like I couldn't look away the entire time that I was watching episode 2 of Uzumaki. From the transformation of the snail boys to the battle of the spiraling hair, the twisted lovers, and finally ending on the cliffhanger of this mysterious broken lighthouse, Uzumaki continues to deliver on the magnificent source material that is Junji Ito's Uzumaki. For me, as like a real big fan of horror and a real big fan of Junji Ito, this is like easily the best horror anime I've ever seen, what might be the best horror anime of all time, and to me, it's probably going to be the best piece of animated work that comes out this year in 2024. Well, I guess that is unless like Arcane Season 2 has something to say about it. As always, guys, if you did enjoy this video or learn something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as your engagement on this video really does go a long way in helping to put these videos into the algorithm, and it is the easiest way to support me. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of episode 2 of Uzumaki. Do you think it deserves 100% on Rotten Tomatoes? As well, let me know what your favorite horrific scene from this episode was. Mine definitely had to be the transformation of Katayama into this snail boy. This scene is just like so horrifyingly Ito. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out some of my other content on screen now. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Until next time, stay safe out there. Peace, love, Adu.